an expertise with respect to single-family housing and affordable housing, helping to develop and come up with financing strategies to construct and build those types of projects as well.
And I'd want to add, too, on the local development code reference that we have in here, our expertise in working on zoning and land use matters is pretty well known. And in Kansas City, Missouri, at least, we were invited a few years ago to participate in the revamping of their zoning ordinance, which was a Herculean undertaking, and it was a multi-month effort of caucusing together with other experts in the field to work on that sort of thing. And I know from the RFP response that looking at redoing your codes and some of the things relative to development are potentially on the horizon for you as well, and we wanted to make sure that you knew of our experience in that regard. With respect to project financing, I'm going to stand aside and let Jean and Herb talk about that.
Okay. In terms of, as I mentioned earlier, I've had about 30 years of experience primarily in municipal finance, and I have been involved in helping municipalities find the funds to basically handle all of their basic infrastructure needs, streets, street lights, water, sewers, sidewalks, all those process. And we've also been involved in large and complex financings. We recently were involved in rewriting the master ordinance for the Kansas City Airport. We've been involved in financing for O'Hare Airport in Chicago and St. Louis Airport. We were counsel on the entertainment center, KC Live in Kansas City, which was a huge project that combined several different sources of revenue fundings. We've been involved in stadiums and some fairly complex procedures there. And also we helped to implement incentives to help bring private industry into the municipality to help increase the tax base and all that. We're familiar with various tax incentives, tax abatement, tax increment financing, and other mechanisms that can stimulate economic growth.
Yeah, I'd like to give an example of that. Specifically, right now, I'm serving as outside development counsel for the Port Authority of Kansas City, Missouri. And one of the things that we just finished in this past legislative session was amending the state legislation on the Port Improvement District, which will allow the Port Authority to essentially create what's tantamount to a community improvement district or a special taxing jurisdiction where they can tax sales tax and property tax up to 1 cent that will allow for port projects to move forward. And so that's something where we've drafted the legislation, we shepherded through the approval process, and we're actually getting ready to start engaging in the first port improvement district now in the state of Missouri.
The other thing I would add, that we're very good with respect to coming up with strategies to do what we call layered financing, where we may employ conventional financing, bond financing, tax increment financing, in order to leverage public dollars in order to achieve or build a project. Given our collective experience, we've been very successful in those areas as we have with respect to real estate transactions and development projects.
And we've, I think, already touched on some of the projects that we've worked on. Jean mentioned the Chicago O'Hare expansion. Gary, Indiana, right now we're working on a public-private partnership with them to look at revamping the airport into a intermodal transload facility that's going to help them parasitically feed off of Chicago O'Hare and getting some of the benefit of having that there. The entertainment district, I think, was also referenced, and I just touched on the port improvement district. You know, we've talked a lot about financing, I think, in the last couple of slides, so I just wanted to go back and reiterate the fact that we recognize that your RFP solicitation was for city attorney, and I just want to reinforce the fact that we feel like we've got all of the ability and knowledge and expertise to seamlessly help you in that regard. So why choose us? Well, I just said, we've got what we believe to be the relevant experience to get moving for you. We've got a specialty, which I think is a complement to our general knowledge, which is we've got the specialties and experience in the things that at least I perceive are going to be those things that the City of Gardner is going to be embarking on as it takes itself to the next level in development, which impressively over the last 2 and 3 years you all have been, you know, definitely on the map. We believe that because of the content of our RFP and the fact that we are willing to do some learning curve, or what I refer to as a familiarity curve at no cost to the city, this will allow us to come in and understand the nuances of how you all operate and what you're looking for, which is beyond the black and white print of what's going to be in your zoning codes and so forth. And as I said a second ago, because of our expertise, we think that you will then have instant access to the expertise that you're going to need when you encounter a more pithy issue that you need to encounter or address, rather, with respect to your future development initiatives. So what to expect? You want to take part of that?
Sure.
You get a second.
We're responsive and attentive. We are a boutique law firm, as mentioned. We have what we believe is a sophisticated expertise. We're creative in our problem solving. We understand public entities, and we believe in a high quality work product. That is a hallmark and benchmark for us as well.
And my hallmark and benchmark is that I work hard, but I have a good sense of humor, because I'm sure that life is just too short not to have a good sense of humor. So that's my, he asked me not to put that bullet on there, but I put it on there anyway. All right, so why do we want to be your city attorney? You know, I tell a lot of people I wanted to be an architect, but I'm really bad at math. And so I became a lawyer instead, and that I've got the best of all worlds, because I'm able to work with developers, I'm able to work in the legal context and see how things get built and move forward, and it's exciting to me. So I fancy myself a little bit of an entrepreneur, and this is really the bailiwick that I like to find myself in. I believe we're subject matter experts in what we do. As I said a second ago, you all have done some amazing things in the last 3 and 4 years, and I see the trajectory of Gardner is going some pretty dynamic directions, and I think it would just be really cool to work on with a client and on projects that are going to be exciting in that regard, that's going to be good for the city.
And in addition to that, while we're serving you, most importantly, we're serving your citizens and the residents of Gardner, and that's most important to us. So with that, we appreciate the opportunity and would like to open it up for questions and answers if appropriate.
I have a question, I guess, for Ms. Bergman. What railroad then were you with? I mean, with BNSF at Lathrop and Gage?
No, I was not. I represented the Kansas City Terminal Railway Company, which is actually owned in part by the BNSF, the UP, Kansas City Southern, Canadian Pacific, and the Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern. So I actually would have had a conflict of interest to work on BNSF matters here locally, because they were also a shareholder of my primary client. So I've worked on BNSF matters in Cheeto, Arizona. I had one small matter in Richmond, California several years ago, but locally I did not work for the BNSF.
So they're still owned by, I guess, the company you worked for was?
The Kansas City Terminal Railway Company, which is it's a short line terminal railway that runs only in Kansas City, just slightly into Kansas.
Uh-huh.
So I did not work directly for the BNSF. They were actually an adverse party because they were an owner of the company that I represented.
Okay. You're going to do well if you have a sense of humor here.
I do. Go right ahead.
What do you, I don't know how much you've had a chance to study our unique situation, both, from an economic development perspective, but from a historical perspective of a town that's, kind of had a lot of division on which way it should go. Is it a bedroom community? Is it an industrial complex? So what things do you see that we need help with? Do you have you had a time to study that?
Well, I haven't had time to study it outside of monitoring newspaper articles that I've read over the last several years. I would say, and I think it's maybe pregnant in the comment that you made about leading up to your question, I think that you need some strategic planning and some master planning that will help guide what your direction is going to be. I know that there's always going to be a struggle and maybe a schism in attitudes, and you may never have unanimity. I don't know where anybody will find all that harmony. But it strikes me that you may be able to strike a balance between being a little bit of both, and it's all, the devil is in the detail about how you get there, how you plan for the things that are unsavory for one constituency and not for another.
Is there a town or a city that you see us becoming with the opportunities that lie ahead with that strategic planning? I mean, you've worked for railroads mm-hmm. in different towns and different municipalities. What will we look like if the council has its way in creating the best town for the people who live here? What do you see?
I don't know that I could find an example that's going to be spot on, and if you want me to move on, so you
No.
Okay. And frankly, Councilman, I don't know that I would be so bombastic as to say, I think you ought to look like so-and-so, but having said that, a really, I think, strong municipality is going to have enough of the right things to make the pie make sense. So I can see harmony between having a sector of your community that does serve and relate to and respond to